Today we're going to walk through the Descope Agentic Identity Hub, a centralized control plane for managing identity, access, and authorization for AI agents. We'll cover how you register and manage agents, how you secure tools using MCP servers, how agents connect to OAuth providers and APIs, and finally how policies tie everything together to enforce least privilege access. We'll start on the Agentic Identity page. This is your global inventory of AI agents connected to Descope. Every agent, whether it's a customer-facing assistant, an internal automation agent, or a background worker, is represented here as a first-class identity. From here, you can see exactly which agents exist, how agents are registered with Descope, what the users associated with them consented to, and what resources they are allowed to access. This gives you full visibility into your agent ecosystem, making it easy to audit access, rotate credentials, or quickly understand the blast radius of any agent. You can see associated scopes of the agent, associated connections of the agent, as well as when users granted consent, when it expires, and so on. You can also filter the agents, either by agent name, client ID, IP address, and others, and see which MCP servers are associated with those agents. Next, let's move to MCP servers. This is where Descope really shines for agent-to-tool authorization. An MCP server in Descope acts as a full-fledged authorization server. It supports consent flows, CIMD, dynamic client registration, fine-grained scopes, and custom session management. Let's create a new MCP server to see what this experience looks like. First, we define the server itself. This represents the logical boundary around a set of tools or APIs your agents can access. We can define a name, an MCP server URL, as well as a description. Next, we'll have to decide which registration methods we want to allow, if any. Now, these are all dynamic registration methods. Once I create the MCP server, you can also define clients manually in the Clients tab. Scrolling down, we can create MCP server scopes. These scopes define exactly what an agent is allowed to do, for example, reading data, writing data, or invoking specific tools. Typically, these scopes are at a tool level, and we can add scopes for a read tool as well as a write tool. So here we can have calendar write and calendar read. We can also mark these scopes as mandatory or optional. We can define a description to show on the consent screen for end users and map them to connection scopes if necessary. Once I create my MCP server, a well-known configuration endpoint will automatically be generated for my MCP server. I can now plug this directly into my MCP implementation, whether I'm using the Descope provider with FastMCP, the Vercel MCP adapter plugin, or your own MCP server using protected metadata endpoint that you host yourself. Descope becomes the identity and authorization layer, while your MCP server focuses purely on tool execution. As you can see here, if you want to create a client to connect manually, you can do so as well here. Now let's take a look at connections. Connections are essentially your secure token vault for agents and MCP servers. This is where you configure external OAuth providers your agents need to connect to, as well as API keys for tools that don't support OAuth. These tokens are not issued by Descope. Instead, Descope securely stores and manages external credentials that your agents or MCP tools rely on. Connections can be used directly with agents or indirectly through an MCP server. All OAuth tokens and API keys are stored in a secure vault. Descope fully understands OAuth lifecycles, including refresh tokens and expiration, so when an agent or MCP server requests access, Descope automatically returns the correct up-to-date token. This means that your agents never need to handle secrets directly. You will get centralized storage, automatic refresh, rotation, revocation, and auditing, all while still relying on Descope-issued tokens for authentication and authorization. In short, connections let you safely bridge Descope identity and policy enforcement with the external systems your agents need to operate. Finally, let's tie everything together with policies. Policies allow you to define rules such as which types of agents can access which MCP server scopes, which agents can use specific connections, and which OAuth scopes and API keys they are allowed to receive. If you are using an MCP server, policies control scope access within those servers. Let's go ahead and create a simple rule where users associated with agents that possess a scheduler role can access within my demo server the ability to schedule meetings as a scope. I will just select that scope and create a rule name for this new role. Once I create this, my first rule is now live. If you're not using MCP, policies can still apply, but instead they determine which connection tokens and scopes an agent can receive directly. So in the connections policy section, we can make a similar rule where users roles equals scheduler. And this time we can say directly that agents with users who have the scheduler role can access this Google Calendar scope when they possess that role. I'll give the same rule name, click create, and my rule is live. This gives you fine-grained least privilege access control, purpose-built for agentic systems. Finally, let's take a look at the Agentic Activity Dashboard. This is one of Descope's built-in dashboards designed specifically for observing and auditing agent behavior across your system. The Agentic Activity Dashboard gives you real-time and historical visibility into how agents, MCP servers, connections, and policies are actually being used. At the top, you can see MCP server registrations broken down by registration type. This makes it easy to understand which MCP servers are active in your environment and how agents are registering against them. Next, we can see active connections by token. This shows which OAuth tokens or API keys are currently in use, giving you immediate insight into credential usage and potential over-permissioning. One of the most powerful sections here is the top policy violations by MCP server. This surfaces when agents are attempting to access scopes or tools they are not authorized for, broken down by MCP server. Finally, we have top policy violations by connection. This helps you quickly identify misconfigured agents, overly broad connections, or policies that need tightening, all without digging through logs. Together, this dashboard acts as your operational command center for agentic identity, helping security teams, platform teams, and developers proactively monitor risk, enforce least privilege, and debug authorization issues as they happen. With the Descope Agentic Identity Hub, you get full visibility and control from agent registration to MCP-based authorization to secure connection management, policy enforcement, and real-time activity monitoring. It's a complete identity and access foundation purpose-built for agentic systems.